Can you hear Becca? Brisket, spaceships, and more strip clubs per capita in Houston than anywhere else in the country. The fun facts are always here. It's the Moss Spring Training Tours, and we continue to roll on with the defending American League West champion Houston Astros, Vegas Mac, and myself. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Just enjoying some spring break, watching some basketball, and trying to figure out the NFL a little bit.
Craziness going on. Excuse me if my eyes are red. They look like they're bloody. They look like I put my face through a window because I was watching the opening rounds of the ACC basketball tournament. I don't recommend that to anybody. Just absolutely brutal. All kinds of stuff going on. Fantastic game going on right now with Delaware and UNC Wilmington. But let's stick to the ball field. And my favorite thing to do as we talk about this Houston Astros team, Mac, they have not missed the playoffs since 2016. They've won 7 of the last 8 AL West titles, including 4 straight. And this is one of my favorite parts of the show. Give it to me on your first thoughts on the Houston Astros.
Houston, we have, well, not as good a team as we've had in the past.
Houston's got a big problem, and it covers between 2 foul poles at Daikin Park, whatever the name of it is. I don't care. They don't pay my bills. It's not my job to tell you what the new name of Minute Maid Park is. It starts with a D. It's got an I and a K in there somewhere. But, interesting stuff here when we look at this Astros team, and obvious, you can point to the obvious. Bregman's gone. Tucker's gone. Obviously, Carlos Correa, that was a couple of years ago. This is a whole different looking Astros team here, and it's kind of ironic. Their biggest weakness in 2024 was their outfield. Their biggest weakness in 2025 is probably also going to be their outfield. And the big story in spring after Bregman signed with Boston, Jose Altuve is going to play in the outfield, and the adjustment can be easily made probably in the Astros home ballpark because it is a tiny left field. And I don't mean that, or maybe I do mean that, pun intended, for Altuve, but he is a good baseball player. He is a good defender. I think he'll adjust easily. And there's not much more easier parks, if you will, to adjust to playing left field than the short porch in Houston with the Crawford boxes.
The last second baseman that played for Houston that went to the outfield made a pretty good adjustment, right? I mean, It's in the Hall of Famer. So, I mean, he'll be fine. But you hit the nail on the head. Even if you put Jose Altuve in the outfield, this is still a huge issue, among other things, for the Astros.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into the nuts and bolts of the position players, but as always, we're gonna start where a lot of baseball games are won and lost, and that's on the mound. When you look at the makeup of the Houston Astros pitching staff, Framber Valdez goes into a contract year. Hunter Brown, who had a better second half than he did first half. Ronel Blanco, Spencer Arrighetti, Hayden Wesneski, who came over in the Kyle Tucker deal. And then we've got J.P. France. We've got Christian Javier. We've got Lance McCullers Jr., all guys, juniors. How is juniors plural, moron? Junior, all guys who are dealing with some form of injuries and all have different kind of ETAs and everything. Starting pitching looks pretty good. I'm very interested to see what happens with Framber Valdez in a contract year. Some guys, that turns into a great thing. Other guys, they end up costing themselves millions and millions of dollars. What do you think when you look at the starting rotation for the Astros and manager Joe Espada?
Yeah, Framber's, here's the thing. He knows in the back of his mind that at the end of this season, win, lose, or draw, he's probably the number one name free agent, left-hander, that's going to be on the board. And we know the reluctancy of Jim Crane and the Houston Astros organization to give money and extensions to their players, especially pitchers. They just don't do it. So, he's got to go into the season kind of thinking, this, for the most part, is probably it for him in Houston. And so, like you said, I think, again, you're right on that. Some guys handle their last year on the contract really, really well and have a great year. Others don't. And I think a little bit of the shine is a little bit off the Astros this year as well. They had all these young guys that kind of came up, and then it's kind of boom, they're all gone.
Yeah, and and Houston's kind of kind of ironic that we're talking about Houston the day after we finished with the Orioles. We did the Brewers first and then the Orioles yesterday. And my comment on the Orioles was, what do you want, prospects or parades? And Houston is kind of like one of the prime examples. Another team I can think of that I wrote down here, Chicago, the Cubs. Eventually, when you have all this talent in the minor league level and they graduate to the major league level, you can't keep everybody. And Houston's really kind of dealing with that. And they do have some good young players that I think we're also going to see this year. One of which, when we get to the position players, I think can help their outfield immediately. But they're in that classic spot where eventually these guys all do graduate to the majors and you can't keep them all. And that was kind of the point I was trying to make yesterday when we were talking about the Orioles is, you're not going to be able to keep all these guys. So why not take the youth that you have now, go get the pitcher? In the Astros case, it's somebody's got to go. And we know Yordan Alvarez is going to be due money. And if you're going to pay one guy on the Astros, I'm pretty sure most Astros fans and most people that just watch baseball in general would go, I'd rather pay Yordan Alvarez than Framber Valdez because there seems to be more arms, at least in the pipeline. I think Wesneski in the Cubs trade with Tucker, I think that was a big piece for them, and you saw their need to rebuild that. But, when I look at Hunter Brown specifically, 3.49 ERA. Again, he had a better second half than he did first half, and they kind of got him to utilize the changeup and the sinker a little more than his fastball. And I think that's where we got a little more of what we think Hunter Brown could ultimately be. Ronel Blanco is another guy I think is massively key for the Astros this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Valdez and Brown, both really good ground ball pitchers, that brings up another issue. They're ground ball pitchers. That means your guys in the field have to make plays. And, you lost your Gold Glove third baseman. And Paredes maybe offensively might be able to do the same things as Bregman, but he's not Bregman at third base. So that's one of the issues with those two guys. And yeah, Brown and already, I mean, they had a really good second half. Can they repeat that? Can they take that next step now and do it for a full season? That's kind of the key things. They look good at the top. I mean, the pitching does look good. But, what Astros team are we going to get? Are we going to get the first half 2024 Houston Astros? Or are we going to get the second half Houston Astros? And from what I've seen so far with Alex Bregman, I think Alex Bregman was a lot of glue to that team as well. I think he meant a lot more to that team than just average. From what I've seen so far with the Red Sox, what he does in the clubhouse, this is a guy that really, really held that team together. So it'll be interesting to see that dynamic. What happens? Like you said, you've got pitchers that throw ground balls. You got to make the plays.
Yeah, and we all remember last year we were like, "What the hell is wrong with the Astros?" They started 12-24, and they finished 88-73. So they really turned it on. But I think that's a little deceptive. When it came to what happened with the Astros last year, yes, they made the plays. They did the things that they had to do. But I think the Astros also massively benefited from Seattle literally crapping down their legs last year. And then Texas kind of doing the same thing. Texas had a lot more injury issues. Seattle was just atrocious. They couldn't hit their way out of a wet paper bag last year. So I don't know if it was as much the Astros turned it on as the rest of the division kind of fell on their face. And we've already talked about the Texas Rangers. We talked about them last week. We're going to get to the Mariners next Thursday, I believe it is. That'll be one of the days of the beginning of the NCAA tournament. So we're going to pre-record that one. But when I look at their bullpen, this was another issue for them last year, mainly Josh Hader, who was terrible last year. If he can right the ship and get back to the Josh Hader we saw in his National League days, when he was trying to command that massive contract. That's a big thing. And the guy who really didn't get any attention last year in their bullpen, who pitched really well, is Taylor Scott. Even though he can't spell his name right, but he pitched really well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the Astros as a top 10 bullpen, and I think kind of a little bit is just the performance last year. They were just they pitched like the team played, bad in the first half and a little bit better in the second half. But I mean, anytime you have a Josh Hader closing games for you, I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, guy's been one of the best in the last couple of years of closing games. And they have some other guys in there, Brian Abreu as well. They were eighth in ERA, which wasn't bad, but the hits and home runs that they gave up, I think they were like towards the bottom of the league in hits and home runs. And so they got to fix that. So, that's a good starting point. Can that be fixed? Yeah, I think so. I don't think pitching is going to be a huge problem for the Astros. It's not, they don't have the best staff in the division. They might not even have the second best staff in the division. Their issue, I think, is going to be offensively, but I like their pitching staff. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's almost like if you could take the Astros bats and put them with the Mariners arms, you'd have a really damn good team. I mean, and it's not to, I'm not throwing shade here, and we're past the point of the trash can jokes and all that. Most of those guys aren't even a part of this team anymore. Another guy I really like in their bullpen is Bennett Sousa. I think he's another guy that can be decent for them. But when it comes down to like Spencer Arrighetti, which one, as you mentioned, which one are we going to get? Are we going to get first half Arrighetti, who was over 5, or are we going to in his ERA, or are we going to get second half, who was down near 3? Who knows what comes from Wisniewski and Lance McCullers, and he's McCullers is kind of really strapped them, and this isn't any fault of his. I mean, injuries are a part of the game. But a 5-year, $85 million deal, and the dude's made 8 starts. I mean, that's going to hinder a lot of anything that you're trying to do.
Yeah,
I think.
Go ahead. And Christian Javier as well. I mean, that's the thing about, we don't know what we're going to get out of these guys. If you get a solid Valdez and Brown and Blanco and Arrighetti, I mean, pitch half as good as they pitch in the second half, and some of these other guys come up. I mean, they become contenders. Let's be honest, they really do become contenders, especially in that West.
Yeah, and Dana Brown's famous quote is, "I'm always in the market for pitching." So you always know that Houston's going to be one of those teams that if there's a pitcher out there to get, they're going to go get him. Obviously, the American League's arms race, if you will. Good Lord, English is a tough language. It got a lot more crowded yesterday with the news coming out of the Bronx with Garrett Cole. There's a lot more teams in the American League now that are still angling for arms. So we've kind of had this thing, and maybe we're the ones that are just going to continue to beat this drum on 6-man rotation, 6-man rotation, 6-man rotation, where the Astros are going to struggle to get to the 5th guy in their rotation a little bit, especially at the beginning of the season here. And Dana Brown is going to make that move if there's a move there. So we talk about the pitching and the question marks. Last year when they went into that series, they ran into the Tarek Skubal buzzsaw. They only scored 3 runs in that sweep that bounced them out of the playoffs to the Tigers. So you've got a track record and a pattern of consistency, but I think it's got to be remembered by people when we assess this Houston team that a lot of those pieces that made up 7 of 8 AL West titles, 4 straight, haven't missed the playoffs since 2016. A lot of those guys are gone.
Yeah, and one guy we haven't talked about him. He may not have had the best numbers, but his presence, and that was Verlander. He was there. I mean, yeah, he was hurt a lot, but still, when you have a Justin Verlander there, the guys gravitate towards somebody like that, especially pitchers. They're gonna look, and even though, like you said, he wasn't pitching all that much, they still can pick his brain and kind of see how he does things and whatnot. And he's not there. They really, I mean, you're looking at Valdez. He's not only their ace, he's their guy that everyone's going to look up to on that staff.
Yeah, and absolutely. And you in mentioning Verlander, I mean, you've already seen it in some of the shots that you've seen from Giants spring training. I mean, how he's already, impacting the Giants young pitchers, and the Giants have quite a few of them, and Hayden Birdsong and Kyle Harrison, and just guys that can pick his brain. And I think when you get a team like the Giants that goes out and gives Justin Verlander $15 million, it's not because we think we're going to get 20-game Justin Verlander. We're trying to get mentor Justin Verlander as much as we'll take whatever he's got left. And the back end of Justin Verlander is still better than a lot of fourth and fifth starters on any team. So, I think that's an excellent point you made there is that presence not being there is a big, big deal. When we switch over to the offensive side, not much you need to say about Jose Altuve. He had a down year and he still hit 295 with 20 homers, 22 stolen bases. Isaac Paredes, the guy they bring over to play third base. Dakin Park, however you pronounce it. I don't really care. Again, they don't pay our bills. That's a good ballpark for him because he hits a lot of fly balls, and fly balls tend to do very, very well in Houston. And so I think that could be a sneaky good pickup for them. And then we know, obviously, the biggest name they grabbed. A lot of people out here were sad about it, but I hate to break it to you, Diamondbacks fans. He's 34 years old. That's why the Diamondbacks weren't willing to give Christian Walker a ton of money. And already Walker's dealing with, the pesky freaking lat issue in spring training, which you never know what the hell is going on there. He's 34 years old. That being said about Christian Walker, he's been a very late bloomer in his career. So I like the top four, even the top five in this order. Maybe if you want to stretch it down to six, projected Jeremy Pena. After that, I've got a lot of questions about their depth at the back end of this lineup.
Yeah, let's start with Walker. I mean, I talked about Valdez and Brown being ground ball pitchers. Guys are going to have to make plays. The casual fan doesn't realize how much what a difference a great first baseman makes for the entire infield. Keith Hernandez, I'm going to go back a little bit. Mark Grace. I mean, these guys make your infielders so much better. And Christian Walker is going to do that. He's going to make that defense a whole lot better. Paredes, pull hitter, he's going to enjoy those Crawford boxes. But listen, the Astros have been down this road before. We thought when they got Jose Abreu, Abreu was a pull hitter too. And he actually stunk up the joint there. He didn't get it done. So we have to actually see him hitting in that stadium. We definitely know Wrigley wasn't the stadium for him, the field for him. He actually came out and said that. It's just not for him. So I think that's a definite offensive upgrade for them. Again, Alvarez may be one of the best hitters in baseball, without a doubt. And then again, you slot in Walker. But like you said, it's a drop-off. For me, a couple of things. Chas McCormick, if he could get back to his 2023 form, definitely is going to help this team. He was just did not have a good year. He was horrible last year. Let's just be honest.
That back injury saddled him big time last year.
Yeah. But the one that for me is Jeremy Pena. He's a shortstop. He was the reason they let Carlos Correa go. And I don't really think that he's really lived up to his potential anywhere near what he should be, especially offensively. I think they missed it on him.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, when it comes to Jeremy Pena, you nailed it. And let me correct myself. Let me go back a second here. Oblique on Walker, not a lat. I'm getting my muscle injuries of muscles that I don't even have confused here. He was taking some ground balls today. They're hoping he can swing a bat by opening day. Doesn't sound like it's going to be long, but obliques and lats tend to be things that we have no comparison on. So back to Pena. I think it's easy for a lot of us to forget because you really do with how good the Astros have been, how deep the runs that they've been on. Last year was only his third full year in the bigs. And because of how good the Astros are, I even forgot about that when I went back and I'm like, no, let me pull. And I'm looking at his career stats. I'm like, yeah, it was his third full year in the league. You brought up Chas McCormick. Yeah, again, the back injury. Here's another guy who's penciled in, projected to be probably the ninth hitter, and that's Jake Myers. Jake Myers, if we get 2017 to 2019 Jake Myers, that's a really good Jake Myers. If we get Jake Myers post-2019, that's going to be a guy that Jacob Melton probably replaces sooner rather than later for the Astros. One of their best prospects, the number 64 overall pick out of Oregon State in the 2022 draft. I think we're going to see him sooner rather than later, especially if Myers or McCormick start to struggle right out of the gates.
And here's another thing. They've started to play Cam Smith, who they got in that trade. He's a third baseman by trade, but they started playing him in right field. So, here's the thing. If you're going to mess with a young kid and change his position, you have to know that they're serious about playing him. Otherwise, they let him go down to the minors playing. In essence, he's kind of blocked. The thing about, Paredes, it was a great trade for the Astros because they have him locked up till 28, So, so Smith is kind of blocked. Not going to put him at first because you have Walker. So, now he becomes a corner outfielder. So I think that's a good move. Again, unproven. We don't know. But he's had a pretty good spin. He's hitting 529. He's hit a couple of home runs already. So we talk about the outfield being a weak spot. Altuve, like you said, maybe Myers, maybe Smith comes in. McCormick has doesn't have to have as good a 23, just a better than he did last year.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now that outfield doesn't look half as bad.
And it's a hell of a point you brought up when you make a position switch and you start messing with a young player's position. For those that are not familiar with it, let's use an example that we saw last year. Jackson Merrill, he was a shortstop, was a badass center fielder for San Diego. A lot of people think, the sky's the limit for him. There's a couple other guys, and this is a common practice with the Astros because for some reason the outfield has been such a thing for them. You mentioned Cam Smith. There's also Zach DeCenzo, who they've messed with him in the outfield, and Shea Whitcomb, who they're doing the same thing with down in AAA. So they know clearly that, hey, we don't have the players in the outfield positions. We've got to maybe manufacture them with what we have. So I think between Smith, Melton, DeCenzo, Whitcomb, we could see one of them, two of them, all of them. And those guys like Myers and McCormick are guys that are prime candidates. Hey, if you're struggling out of the gate, because I think the Astros know Texas is not going to be as bad as they are. And you can't imagine that Seattle hits worse than they did last year. I don't think that's humanly possible for Seattle to hit worse than they did last year.
No.
Oakland, we know about Oakland's lineup. Just posted on our channels here a little while ago, TJ's preview of the Philadelphia, Oakland, West Sacramento, Las Vegas A's of Henderson County, whatever the hell they are. You got Butler and Boudet and Rooker and one of our show favorites, Shea Bangaliers. Like, you're going to have to score runs in the AL West. The Angels, who knows what the hell is going to happen with the Angels? The Angels don't know what's going to happen with the Angels. So I think this division, as we pan the camera out, we got to get somebody to sponsor that, man. Kodak, somebody give us a call. Email us at mikearanoshow@gmail.com. But as we pan the camera out to the division there, I think this division, honestly, especially with the top four, might be the tightest race in all of baseball this year. And every player in every position is going to be extremely scrutinized in this division. And, of course, the Astros are going to get all of that because, they're the benchmark.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. I wonder what would happen if the Astros got off to another bad start. I wonder how quickly they would be to just say, teams are going to be looking for arms. We already know it. Everybody in the American League East, Boston, New York, Baltimore, they're all going to be looking for arms. And that's just to start. If Houston gets off to another bad start, do we already start to hear we've already started to hear the rumblings about Valdez going, how long is it going to take? So for Houston, it's one of these things. I think the beginning of the season, the first month, those first 25, 30 games are going to be very, very important. More important than any other team probably in a division, because I think it's going to set a precedent to what they're going to do the rest of the year.
You want to talk about starts? Let's talk about starts. They open with the New York Mets. Then they get the Giants. Then they're at the Twins. They're at the Mariners. So those are their first four series right out of the gate. So you're going to deal with the Mariners pitching staff and have to deal with them up in Seattle, which is nowhere near a hitter-friendly park. Obviously, that's turned into one hell of a rivalry between those two teams. Yeah. Obviously, one's the hammer, one's the nail. But, right out of the gate with the Mets, I mean, your pitching staff, your bullpen is going to be tested extremely right out of the gate there. Who knows what the hell the Giants are going to be. We'll talk about them, I believe, a week from actually, no, they're coming up next Monday. And then the Twins. I mean, the Twins are another team. Like that's a pretty rough go of it right out of the gate. Then they get the Angels and the Cardinals, but then they got, Padres, Blue Jays, Royals, Tigers, and that's just the end of April. I mean, that's of all the teams that we're doing in these spring training tours and everything. When I looked at everybody's schedule, again, you can't win a World Series in April, and obviously the Astros proved you can't lose a division or lose a chance at a World Series in April because of what they did. But again, I think that's a little kind of jaded there and misconstrued because the rest of the division didn't put any pressure on them. So, ready to play a game?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
AL West champions. Again, Mac gets $100 of my money here to make the bet that he feels most comfortable with. So, AL West champions, they're a plus 125. American League pennant, they are a plus 650. To win the World Series, I was a little shocked when I saw this. And I think this is name and track record more than its complete pieces. They're a plus 1,500 to win the World Series. Over under win total, 87.5. So a half game over what their total was last year. And then I thought this one was interesting because I don't know how I totally feel on this Astros team. To make the playoffs, obviously, minus 185. A lot of people expecting them. To miss the playoffs, the Astros are a plus 145, and I thought that was a little intriguing. So, not trying to sway you either way because you get to make the bet. So, which way are you going to spend $100 there?
That's kind of interesting because as I'm kind of thinking in my head, I'm thinking, we're probably going to get two from the East, at least two from the East, probably at least two from the Central, but maybe three. Do we only get one? So. Do we only get one from the West again? If we get one from the West,
I don't know if it's them.
Well, I think it's going to be. I think Texas. So I'm going to say miss the playoffs.
I think that's the best value bet here. Yeah. When I looked at everything, I was a little shocked that their World Series odds were as short as they were. I expected them to be kind of maybe more 20-1 kind of range. Yeah, the AL West makes sense because again, that I think it's going to be the tightest division of baseball. But yeah, when I saw that the plus 145 to miss the playoffs, and we said it at the top of the show, they haven't missed the playoffs since 2016. But a lot of those guys that helped them do that are no longer here. So
I was going to say, like we said, the Central's gotten better. The Central was good last year, and the Central's gotten better. I think the East got better. And so that it becomes a logjam all of a sudden. If you don't win your division, then you got to start dealing with these other teams, in the wild card, obviously. But I'm going to go with miss the playoffs on that one, Mike.
I think that's a good call. So again, follow us at Mike Arana Show everywhere but Snapchat. I'm going to let you do this. Why are we not on Snapchat, Mac?
Because Snapchat.
Make TJ.
And we're not 12.
Yes. All right. Here. Raise the glass for TJ there. Coming up later this week, tomorrow, exactly. If you see it on the bottom of the screen there, congratulations. You can read with the rest of us. The Detroit Tigers, one of those Central teams, and the Chicago Cubs. On Thursday, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and on Friday, the Boston Red Sox. Again, we've got a couple of shows that we're having to make up because of our technical issues last weekend. So instead of trying to project it out, we're just going to give you a couple days at a time here. So again, tomorrow we play 2 every Wednesday, Tigers and Cubs. We'll start with the Cubs, and then we'll go to the Tigers. Then we have the Diamondbacks on Thursday, the Red Sox on Friday. If you want to go one more step.
The Cubs are never first.
Yeah. Hey. And then the Giants on Monday, and that's about as far as we'll go. We get you caught up on everything. Also, first time we're going to say this out loud and in public. On Sunday, an hour after the brackets are released, right here, we're going to break down the March Madness brackets. So that's another thing we got coming for you this week. And we've got a really big announcement when it comes to the little white ball in the big green fields that will drop for you here at the end of the week. Some exciting stuff coming up. A lot of people working hard that you don't ever get to see on the screen. A lot of them have faces for radio, so that's why we don't put them on screen very often. But for the crew behind the scenes, for TJ, for Vegas Mac, and for all of you out there, we appreciate you. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Tigers and Cubs. Until then, we're out.